Hey, Dan, I guess this thing is live. It must be. Yeah, you first, for sure. I got some. I ain't got enough room down here at the bottom. What's going on? Bad weather out there where you are? Nah, I got it. Nah, I got it. I guess I'm talking. I reckon. Yeah, some bad weather across out east west of me. It's snowing like the dickens in North Arkansas. And and there's Troy. He done had him some storms.
Well, what's going on?
Did it blow your moo moo up, boy?
No, I tacked it down. I was afraid I'd get a draft.
I bet you do. I bet you were, man. Yeah, buddy.
It snowed a little bit here earlier.
Yeah, I saw it on radar. We done all right as far as all that. We've had a bunch of rain.
Yeah.
We got a wind advisory. It's 44 degrees here though.
Yeah, it snowed a little bit. It it I told my wife today we was watching the news this morning. And she said, "Well, it ain't gonna snow." I said, "Yeah, well."
Yeah.
I said it's always 2 or 3 degrees colder than what they gonna tell it on that TV. I said, "I bet you it might," and it sure did.
Well, it's snowing like the dickens from I-40. Well, really south I-40. It didn't quite get down to Little Rock, but north of Little Rock, all the way to Fort Smith, up in Missouri, eastern Oklahoma. Boy, it claims some snow. It's still snowing up there. Moving on across Arkansas, it look like Memphis is gonna miss it. Hey Tim, there's Aaron in here.
What's up, Steve Adams?
Yeah, man, you got them snow headed your way tonight, boy.
Yeah, well, when you live where we do, you just don't even worry about snow.
Yeah, that's right.
You just got to look at it in the morning and say, am I going to have my high boots or my low boots?
The low boots. Just how deep is it? Yeah, I know.
Nope, I saw your thing come over my I was actually on a TikTok live with some people that are pretty good for TikTok.
Yeah.
And, yeah, we'd already talked about whatever we had to talk about, and the old Steve Adams came up on my feed.
There you go.
I'm in here.
Well, everybody's looking for a place to go late at night, and hello, there's Catch Ranch guy and Dale Hayslip. Yeah, everybody's looking for a place to go.
It's one of my favorites.
Everybody's looking for somebody where to go late at night, and if Mark or some of them don't go live, heck, I do. Hey, Mark, there's Mark there. Yeah, we got enough rain that the road ditches ought to be full of fish.
Well,
we had some rain today here.
Yeah.
But my kids up in Arkansas, they getting snow.
How far up north are your kids?
They're east of Conway, which is north, all 30 miles north of Little Rock.
Oh, well, that's still south to me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, heck yeah. It's way south to you. Yeah. They about on a parallel. They're a little bit north of a parallel with Memphis running across there.
Well, that's pretty good area.
They in the foothills of the Ozarks.
That's a pretty good area too.
Yeah, well, if you like them old red oak trees or whatever they are.
Oh yeah, and so the Osage River is one of those unsung places that has giants, and
I don't
it
know where that
does.
one. I've heard of it, but I don't know where that one is.
Yeah, it spills out of the Ozark Lakes and
Out of what lake?
Lake of the Ozarks. That's actually one of the rivers that makes up the Ozark Lakes,
Oh,
and
okay.
then it goes over the dam or through the dam, and it's generally kind of a flathead river until you get farther south on the Osage, and then the last third, which nobody really fishes it because you generally need a jet
Ah,
to run that section of river. And I knew a guy back in 2000 or so or earlier that used to supply in Fisherman Magazine with quite a few. His name was Virgil Agee.
oh yeah,
And
I remember
yeah,
Virgil Agee. Sure.
remember, and he's somewhat of a legend himself. And Virgil Agee, I only talked to him a few times, but we connected so well we didn't really have to talk again
Yeah.
because he knew the drill, and I was a young guy compared to him at this. I think he's passed actually. I don't think he's been alive for probably 15 years.
Yeah, I don't know.
And but he was a anachronism of what we would call today
Yeah.
because he believed in only deep water, and he believed in running that river. And if anybody knows um, I would say uh, the weather there, he used to carry football helmets in his boat.
Hmm.
And I said, I realized that what he was doing, but I was interviewing him for an article, and I said, Virgil, why do you, you know, carry football helmets in your boat? He said, because at some point if you're weighed down, there's not that many boat ramps,
Yeah.
and if a hailstorm came upon you and you need to get to the boat ramp, you better have some sort of helmet. So for his wife, he had a motorcycle helmet, and for himself, he had a football helmet back. And you and I both know what the football helmets were like.
Oh,
30
yeah.
years ago, it was a cheese pack, and maybe it had the whatever. So
Bet his ears was ringing for a
yeah,
week after that.
Yeah, so Virgil and I became friends almost immediately because we were kind of the same type of person, if you get what I meant.
Yeah.
And I never wrote anything that oh, Virgil and I was peas in a pod or whatever, but I did write a few comments that Virgil had, and Virgil AG said, you know, 25, 30 years ago, he said, you know, he said, I've fished a lot of shallow water for blues, but did I ever catch any giants in shallow water? No. He said he fished amongst the shallow water, but fished the deep water with big baits and his motorcycle helmet. And that's when as a matter of fact, he quoted this one on me. He said there was a thunderstorm coming, and he was below Lake of the Ozarks by probably 30 miles. And he said he was 20 some miles from a boat ramp, and him and his wife were down there and here come a tornado, and he ended up catching a blue of 101 and another one that was 98 back to back before the tornado got to him. Now, I don't know how true this is because you got to know Virgil because he was one of them guys that if you just so happen to run into him at a bar in the middle of nowhere down south, he might tell you all kinds of stories. But he knew not to bullshit me,
Yeah.
because him and I talked enough that he knew a little bit not to bullshit me. But he did say he caught a 102 and a 98 back to back right before a hailstorm hit him. And
Well,
he had to he did put the motorcycle helmet with the thing on his wife's head, and he put the football helmet, which was his football helmet from and don't quote me on anybody, I think 1959.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't much to it.
Yeah, there wasn't, but it's. I feel so fortunate to have met some of those old boys.
Well, let me ask you something,
Yeah.
Tim. Didn't he have a houseboat on the Lower White River?
That I do.
At the yeah,
No, I think you're thinking about it. I think you're thinking about another guy, and I think you're thinking about a whole different river because I never knew AG Virgil to
well,
have a
well, maybe he
houseboat.
didn't, but there was a guy that wrote for Ian Fisherman, the Catfish Edition.
Yes, Virgil never actually wrote. He was
Okay.
always he was a just like if Ian Fisherman was to write about you.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't write, but I do believe there was a guy by the name of Robbie Robinson that North American Fisherman ended up writing about him, and he was actually he actually had a pontoon boat.
No, this was
On
a
Ohio
houseboat. I
lakes.
mean, this was a camp. It was a Yankopian. There's a railroad trestle that crosses the Lower White River about.
Okay.
And it's,
And you know what? That might have been Virgil, but
it's called Yankopian Railroad Trestle. Yankopin, Yankopian.
okay.
And they had a real nice place there. It was more like a fishing lodge. It wasn't a, it was stationary. It was anchored to the bottom. It didn't have a motor on it. It was a house boat,
Okay.
2-story deal.
Yeah.
But I don't. It may not have been Virgil, but this guy wrote some articles in that Ian Fisherman Catfish editions that they had.
Yeah.
I've been by there a bunch of times. I never stopped and talked to him, but he guided trips out on the Mississippi some, out on Smith Point. When you go out to Arkansas River and hit the Mississippi River, you're looking at Smith Point. There's a big curve in the river there, and they fished all around Smith Point. But yeah, it may not have been Virgil. It probably wasn't Virgil, but it was in that same time period.
So Steve
About.
Adams, I am so glad that I get to talk to you because there ain't many people alive still, and I'm not that old, and neither are you. But there's not that many people that still talk about that stuff that happened back in those old days. So somebody just recently caught a state record on the oh shit. I even fished it. The Cumberland River.
That 131.
Well, of whatever note that was, but he ended up catching a state record on the Cumberland River in Tennessee. Yeah. And I fished that river several times, but I really only fished it with Jim Moyer, and I said that in Mark's feed. catfish and crappie marks,
Yeah.
and nobody even knew who Jim Moyer even was.
Yeah.
And
I know who he is.
I felt old. I
Yeah.
was like,
I
oh,
know who he is.
yeah. He was one of the original guys that was talking about being able to catch blue cats in cold water.
Yeah.
In the winter on that, and I fished that river a couple of times with Jim, and we didn't do that great, but I could see how that river is. I mean, that
Well,
thing is
see,
limestone based, and all of a sudden it drops down, and I couldn't help. I think we fished it in February a couple times. And I could not help but think of how great of a flathead river that thing really was.
I don't know. I know a bunch of them used to get together at Cheatham Dam in February.
Yeah,
There's one little old motel there, and the motel would rent them some rooms, but they'd also let them camp in the parking lot. And they'd set up the campers and the tents in the parking lot of the little
yeah.
old motel in this
Oh,
little
yeah.
old hole in the road up there. And they put in there Cheatham Lock and Dam on the Cumberland. And they did it every February. And boy, they caught some good fish. I knew all those guys. I had fished with a bunch of them, but I never went up there. It just they was fishing below that dam, and it was February, and about halftime it was snowing like hell. And that ain't my cup of tea. I'm too far south for all that.
Well,
But I wanted to go a bunch of times, but I never did go.
Steve
And
Adams, I want to go on record and say that when you leave this earth, this place will be a lesser place.
I don't know about that.
Nope, I do, and that's what I'm saying right now.
Yeah.
So, if anybody wants to quote anything Epic Catfish ever said, when
You can
Steve
say
Adams leaves this place,
you can
it's going to
quote
be a
that.
lesser world.
All right.
Huh?
There you go. Well, I appreciate that.
Well, I just call it like I see it.
Yeah.
And, I have known, and a lot of the guys I learned from back in the day are long since gone and buried in the ground. And I'll tell you what, they had some things to say. And they had some things, because it was common sense, they had some things to say and they had some things to do. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of them never got quoted by Indian fishermen, never got quoted by North American fishermen, never got quoted by me or anybody else.
Yeah.
But they knew their shit.
Oh, it's still some guys around down here that you won't ever hear nothing about.
Nope. You won't. I got friends that they'll never be on social media. They'll
But
never be on any of that stuff, and they can flat out catch some big ass fish.
yeah, well, my friend Johnny Summers that caught that fish that they couldn't weigh. Uh, he caught some monster fish in his life.
Oh yeah,
And that's who I started fishing with on the river. He and I started together back in the '60s,
yeah.
and he fishes one stretch of river. He don't fish anymore. Johnny's 7, 8 years older than me, and he doesn't fish anymore.
Well,
But
shit, Steve, you ain't got to go anywhere else when you're where you're from. Holy
well,
moly!
yeah, but when you're fishing in the river in the boat, that's it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, it is.
And he he caught some monsters, and he fishes about a 50-mile stretch
Yep.
from Helena down,
No,
and he
that stretch, brother.
he was catching fish at Battle Axe.
Mm.
But you know what I'm talking about when I say Battle Axe?
Yeah, I do.
He was catching fish at Battle Axe before they had a catfish tournament.
Well, one of the main things is, Steve, it's that we all have a thing in common.
Yeah, Oh,
And the thing in common is we all like big fish, or we all like to catch fish, or we all like to whatever. But when it really comes down to it, honestly, there's guys out there that know. I mean, they literally know where the fish are, when they are there, and how to catch them, and before they leave. Especially in your area because they're so transcontinental,
yeah.
and so are mine. And I've always been impressed with them guys. They're like, it ain't no thing. It's just you fish during this period, you fish during that period, you fish during that period. And it was back in the day baffling because most people are like, I'm gonna fish all the time. And what they didn't realize was the big fish moved in certain areas and they was gone other areas.
That's
And
right.
so that's what kind of led me into knowing when I put effort into 4.5 hours north south,
Yeah.
and because I wasted a whole lot of time back in those days expecting to be able to catch big fish when they wasn't even there.
Yeah.
And so
Uh,
it's been kind of interesting because I put out a video not too long ago that I said, well, it was on TikTok. I said, I can't wait till next season. And there was all kinds of people ask me, what are you talking about? Next season. Because there's people down south catching big fish right now. I said, well, not only are the big fish, they have moved since before Halloween down in that range. I don't have that many big fish. 20% of the big fish that I have available to me in August, September, and the beginning
gone.
part of October. And uh, I tried fishing areas that don't have big fish for big fish so long and was like frustrated
Yeah.
that I wasn't catching big fish. Well, I just had to learn where they go and how they rotate and how they move.
Well, I tell you, Summers and I, we got our learning curve was we shortened it because we had two older friends that real old. They both gone now. They were older, well older than
Yeah.
both of us. They were commercial fishermen. Been on that river since World War II. And one of them before World War II. And we were friends with both of those guys. And it wasn't like they liked us, but they knew we wasn't up to no shenanigans.
Yeah.
And we'd help them watch the gear while it was out. If we saw somebody fooling with the gear, we sure gonna go tell them, go find them and tell them. And so we had that relationship with those guys.
Yeah, but they recognized your power.
Well, and they told us a whole lot about where to go and when to go and what to look for to catch the bigger fish. I can remember talking to them we all kept our boats tied up in a side channel. We didn't take them out. We didn't have no boat ramps. We didn't have boat ramps. We had to slide them down on.
Yep, you just slide it down wherever you could slide it.
And left them tied up, and our boats were right there with the commercial guys' boats, and and we talked to them a lot. And Dennis Johnson and Alec DuBois, and they both would they fish the same stretch of river, and I seen Dennis. I saw him fishing one time with little red tomatoes.
Okay.
It was late in the year in October. And he was fishing his trot lines. He was fishing some hooks, not just nets, but some hooks. And he had that trot line stretched so tight on top of the water, you could play a tune on it. And he had it baited with red tomatoes.
Yep, but he knew the time.
And he didn't do it for about 3 days. And he's catching the catfish on red tomatoes. I'll never forget that. And look, man, we sat there and watched him bait his hook, and he had salt on it. He had a box of tomatoes, cardboard box in his boat. And he had done put salt on them tomatoes, and about every third tomato he put on a hook, he ate one. And we were sitting there laughing at him, and it was funny, man. But he was eating his bait too.
Well,
Yeah, man, and that's where I learned to fish baby toad frogs.
Yeah.
When the baby toad frogs hatch out along the
Yeah.
river banks over there, and they're about an inch long, stretched out, and you hook them right in the skin. And I never could figure out a good rig with a rod and reel to fish for them.
Nope.
I tried to invent every kind of rig I could make to get that frog to float on top of that water where he could swim, get back on that line. But they'd end up drowning. But you had to use a bunch of them and throw it out there, and then about 5 minutes, pull it up and put another on there. And,
Steve,
but you could
Steve,
catch good catfish on for baby toad frog.
Steve, you know what a leopard frog is?
Oh boy, they eating butter. They are eating butter. We call them jumping frogs down here.
Yeah,
Leap
because they do.
frog.
They jump like hell.
We call them leapfrog.
We used to swat them with sticks a little bit,
Yeah.
because they're mainly. I mean, you ain't like a bullfrog where they're gonna sit like under the grass and jump out, but they be on the ground. And we used to fish a river called the can't even remember what it's called, but it was basically a major tributary of the Illinois River, but up there, and it was the name is like escaping me, but when there was enough rain, then it would end up on, I would say, on the ground, but not just like running in the river like it does now. We used to swat them leopard frogs, and you could fish with shad, you could fish with moon eye, some of the best bait you ever wanted to fish with. And when you got on that river, it was the leopard frogs that really excelled.
Yeah.
And at that point in my life, I couldn't imagine that, because I had done so well with shad or moon eye or cut carp or whatever. I just couldn't imagine big channel cats not eating that. And we fished it for several days. I actually was a lumberjack in those days, and we were cutting a timber up there, just south of Rockford. And I had, probably 3-4 days, which I wasn't going home, and there was nothing to do. We had like a kind of a camper, and I got more bat bites on them high bluffs, because this is like a hard maple / red oak, high bluff, and limestone river. And it was probably, you could cast across it for the most part, but I mean, I'm telling you, it went left or I mean, it really winded. It pretty much in northern Illinois, it's mostly pretty much a wild river, because I mean, nobody really farmed by it. And so I'm thinking I'm going to bring really fresh shad and really fresh moon eye and whatever. We're going to whip up on these big channel cats that are in here. Nope, didn't happen. I had more bat bites than I had anything else until I started using leopard frogs, because the leopard frog was so prevalent. We started swatting them and started using them, and out of 6 rods, if you had one leopard frog out in 8, 9, 10, 11 foot of water, right before you had maybe even a riffle or a hole. They was on the leopard frogs hard, but none of the other stuff. They'd like tap it, the fresh shad that I brought right straight from the Illinois River system. Which on the Illinois River system, that was the thing you want to use. If you used a leopard frog, they was just going to tap that, and so that really opened my eyes back in those days.
Oh yeah, on down here, if you can get say a 6 foot rise in the river, say in late July and August, and 6 foot be a pretty good rise in that time of year.
Yeah.
And if you get that rise, it don't matter what the water was, the level was. If you can get that rise and get that water up in some of the woods,
yeah,
where those frogs have hatched out,
yeah,
now you can catch some good catfish in shallow water then, and that's the only time I've ever done it.
yeah,
Is in 8 or 10 foot of water, up in the wood, in the timber. Just fishing right there in the timber.
Yeah.
and caught them on frogs. But I never had that much luck throwing them out there in them deep holes and down
and
ledges and
believe
things.
it or not, the frogs in that river, the frogs even in the deep water was better than the best shad or the best moon,
I wouldn't doubt it.
whatever, or the best sucker you could ever have. But you're absolutely right in the fact that they was even better in shallower water.
That's the way we always had the best luck. Best luck with them was in shallow water.
Yeah, yeah.
We call it backwater. I don't know what the proper term.
And we weren't even calling it backwater because it was basically just the edge of the river, where if you threw a leopard frog in 3 foot of water, you're better off than throwing whatever else we had, shad, moon eye, or whatever, in 20 foot of water.
There you go.
Because the water was coming up, and it was an unusual frog situation. But on the super upper Mississippi River, like 80 miles from Canada too.
Yeah.
But if you was to use leopard frogs down in my area where we're at, they'd be nothing special. You might catch one or you might not. But it wouldn't be like they're focusing on them leopard frogs. Because we have leopard frogs here bigger than what they got up north. I mean, holy shit. You might have a leopard frog that's, the profile bigger than this thing. I mean, they're big. I mean, big. But they wasn't keying on them. Matter of fact, I just remember the name of that. Kinda. The Peatone, Petone, I believe. And it was a major tributary off the Rock River, which goes down into middle Illinois and ends up in the Mississippi River. So the Peatone River, which what I was calling the Bat-Bite River.
Yeah.
The leopard frogs was one of the best baits we had, even though you go like maybe 80 miles south and you end up in the Rock River, and them leopard frogs don't work for the shit.
Well, probably because back up in that back up river there in the backwaters, I would call it, that is where the frogs were, they could get to the frogs the easiest.
Yep.
It became good food for them.
So Steve, I went through this thing where I thought maybe bullfrogs would be the best bait.
Okay, Troy. Hold up, Tim.
Yeah.
All right, Troy. Thank you for coming up, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm just coming up for a few minutes. So wife's looking at me like it's time to go to bed.
All right, boy.
I'll see you.
All right, man.
Good to see you, Troy.
Yeah. See you, chat.
So So I'm thinking that, bullfrogs at some point, because I used everything that walked or crawled for bait at one time or another, including garter snakes and
Yeah.
common water snakes and moles and voles and rabbits and rabbit lungs and chicken heads and whatever. I'm thinking that bullfrogs might be the ticket. So I'd go in the backwaters of the Rock River, and I would like belly crawl through the big, because we don't have rice here, but we have tall grass.
Yeah.
Like, and I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called. But anyway, it would like tear you up a little bit. Sawgrass is what.
Sawgrass.
Yeah. And so I would go through there with a 6-foot pole and like a jig with a little bit of red felt on it. Like
Yeah, and catch
yeah, oh yeah. I'd like work my way through the thing, catch like half a dozen or a dozen big bullfrogs. Well, I did catch some flatheads on bullfrogs back in them days, but it wasn't like it was no secret bait.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it didn't perform like better than like bluegills or suckers or big
Right.
or if
I'd be hard.
if it would have I'd have been in trouble, because then I would have been like cutting my legs up on sawgrass every weekend to get them big
I'd be hard pressed to put a good bullfrog out there on the hook.
Well, and you know what? Bullfrogs can stay on the hook pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Even back in them days. Well, you had 5/0 bass hooks, and you put them right underneath that bottom chin,
Yeah.
through the top, almost by a nostril right here, and put them down with about 8 ounces of weight. And
I'm pretty bad to eat a bullfrog now.
yeah, and so yeah, I mean, I've caught some big flatheads on bullfrogs. Live bullfrogs are just kind of half-assed live bullfrogs, but
Yeah.
that was when I was first coming up with my theory on the equation on cover plus depth plus current equals big flatheads. Well, and if you're going to keep a big bullfrog alive, you better be on the right spot. If you throw in dumb spots, they're just going to die.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. And so luckily I had them kind of figured out back in those days. And yeah, I mean I caught some big flatheads on live bullfrogs, like big ones, like the size of I suppose this coffee cup,
eating size.
Had legs on them about so long.
Oh boy.
Whatever. What?
Yeah, that's eating size.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Most of them was eating size. And I used some that was, that you could like close your hands on a little bit. I mean, they were like the normal size, but
well, I would expect them to be good bait.
Yeah, and they are, but they're no better bait than a bluegill, and I proved that to myself over the years, and because if I didn't, you would hear me today saying that the best flathead bait would be bullfrogs.
Bullfrogs.
You've never heard me say that.
Mm-mm. No, but I could see where they would be.
Yeah,
good bait anytime, because they're there all year round. They don't. I mean, they big. They're out once it warms up. They're out on the banks and everything.
Yep.
Croaking. Yeah.
Yep. But remember one thing: when I'm presenting baits, at least where I fish, when I'm presenting baits, it's usually going to be more than 10 foot deep. So I've only
Mhm.
got so much time for a live bullfrog to
To
attract
do
the
'em.
flathead,
Yeah,
because otherwise they just become this dead bait,
dead bait.
and it's just not that great.
Well, that's
Now,
what I always had trouble trying to fish those baby toads on the rod and reel.
yes,
I even came up with a deal where I tied a heavy float on the end of the very end of the line,
ah,
and then I put a slide swivel on the line with a hook with another cork on it.
nice,
A little with a piece of line about a foot long, maybe, with a hook out there with a cork out there, and then back up the line. I had another swivel with another heavy cork on it, where I could let that line float down the river and stop it, and the corks would stay stretched out. That strip, that line between the two heavy corks would stay stretched out, and that toad frog could swim out there in that foot range he had up and down that line. I even tried
yes,
fishing flatheads like that in the timber on these steep banks where it's got a bunch of stick ups, logs, and trees sticking up. And I did catch one flathead. He didn't weigh about 8 pounds.
yeah,
But for the trouble and the work that was involved, and I didn't do it but 1 year. I didn't try it but once. But it just was a little bit too much rigging for me. And but those toad frogs got to be where they can get some air every once in a while.
yep.
And you free line them basically. But I never could figure out how to catch them on a rod and reel using frogs. But
Well, Steve, I'm going
oh,
to admit to myself, as well as everybody else listening, that although I caught some on bullfrogs and leopard frogs and whatever else, it still wasn't. It still wasn't something you could pattern, because one day you do all right, and the
yeah,
next day you might not do all right. And so, I mean, it just is what it is. Uh,
that's right.
you know, uh, uh, just because you can catch them on Monday doesn't mean you can catch them on Thursday.
And it
And
don't mean you're gonna catch them on the same Monday next year either.
that's right. And it's
Uh,
not. I mean, you can catch a catfish on anything that walks, crawls, swims, or flies at one time or another. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be the best
that's right.
situation that you've
Well,
got.
I know the frog situation, and we had the best luck using them when the river was on a rise in the late
Yep,
summer,
yep, yep.
when it was 110 degrees and the river was rising and up. I mean, a big rise. That's
And
when we.
and not to disagree with you, but I did the best on frogs when it was April 15th to May 15th, when the river was only 43 degrees and it wasn't
Yeah,
on the rise.
that's exactly opposite of what
Yeah,
what we did.
because
Yeah,
that's when most of those frogs were doing their thing. And I knew a guy that it's his name's Stu Mackay. And Stu Mackay wrote for In Fisherman back in the day a couple times. He was the subject a couple things. And up there in Canada, uh, and it was probably late May, early June. One of the best baits for 20-pound channel cats was leopard frogs. And it just so happened to be that he's in the situation. He was kind of learning that. But I mean, they have moon eye up there. Well, they have gold eye up there.
uh-huh.
And one of the best baits was still at that period them frogs.
Yeah. Well,
I knew some guys that swatted them with fly swatters up there because they couldn't catch them. They was kind of big fat dudes, and they,
yeah.
they went up there in about 19, probably 98, 96, 98, and they was using it was right below the Lockport Dam. And the Lockport Dam was known for having, because it comes out of Red Lake. And, I mean, shoot, the average channel cat was 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Using bass rods and everything else. And it was having a good old time. But the bite went dead one day, and they couldn't catch them on suckers. And so one of my friends that was up at that, matter of fact, he was with me up there on that river up by Freeport. He said, well, we started dosing all these leopard frogs, so we swatted on with a fly swatter, 6 or 8 at a time. And then they go back out, and then they just knock the shit out of the big channel cats.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go back to bank. And because you couldn't buy them at the bait shop, they just
that's
kind of lucked on.
No, that's strange. But the leopard frogs would probably work year round down here too.
They probably would.
So, but they're a little bit harder to get than when them toads hatch out. They just about 1,000. You just pick them up with a dip net.
Oh, geez, them toads are all over the place.
Yeah, when they hatch out, when they have those hatches, they just you can walk the edge of these little old sloughs around here and just pick them up by the handful. Heck, I can get them in my yard enough to go fishing.
Yeah.
Because I don't run over them with the lawnmower if I can help it. I'll stop and get him and carry and put him out in the flower bed somewhere. Funny. Yeah.
Steve, I remember when I was probably 12 or 13, we had a rabbit, what I'd call a rabbit hut. And it was a Quonset hut out in the backyard. And I had probably, I don't know, 40, 45, 50 rabbits, and we used to feed them pellets. And I'd, clean probably 25 rabbits every other week or so. And there was enough mice out there that I built a box.
Yeah.
About yay long, and it had like a drop door.
Yeah.
And there was like a string that went up to a thing where if they chewed on this little peg, they would get trapped in it. And so I took them live, and they probably weren't live by the time I hooked them in the guts or whatever. And I just hook them up, and I throw them into the Spoon River. And I caught some giant channel cats on this for years.
Oh, baby, on rats.
I mean, they wasn't rats. They was actually field mice. And you had the gray ones, and you had a little bit of the red ones. I would call them chestnut colored or whatnot. But then I started using squirrels. You get a shoot them with a BB gun or whatever. Them little squirrels, and you use the big red squirrels and just sort of saw them things into like 3/4 because I just wanted to know what they'd eat. And them big and I caught my fair share of turtles on them too.
Yeah.
Because our river isn't really up. I mean, it's the headwaters of a good catfish water, but it taught me too that by the time late June hit, we didn't have them big channel cats up here, and I wondered why that was. I said, wonder why we don't have them big channel cats up here. We just had them little 2, 3, 4 pound locals. And I never put that together until I was older, and then I started doing the DNR studies and the movement of catfish and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, because my river is just a tiny tributary by the time you get up here.
Yeah.
And it's a tributary of a main river, Illinois, and that ain't nothing but a tributary of the Mississippi. So I was truly, truly, truly amazed, but happy to know it.
Look. Yeah, it's if you just pay attention, you can learn a lot just by doing it.
Yeah.
If you pay close enough attention.
Yeah. Yeah, you can. And you know, I've always respected people that they may not know the biology of it. They may not know the physiology of it. They may not know anything. But what they do know is that Dad taught them or Grandpa taught them. This is when the fish are here. This is when they move. This is when you need to do. This is when you need to use catalpa worms. This is when you need to use leopard frogs, or this is when you need to do whatever. And I've
Right.
always respected that.
Yeah, I don't know. The last time you and I talked. I believe. I mean, I've done it through the years, and I believe I can go on any river that's got current and catch a catfish.
Oh yeah.
Uh, I know on the Mississippi, I fished it about 250 miles of it, probably more than that, probably 350 miles of it. And I've always caught fish. We go
Yep.
and stay at a place for 2 or 3 days and fish, camping.
Yep.
And all I do is fish the same places I fish local, the same type water, same type spots. And some places on the river, like up around Tunica, man, they have got some spots up there that we don't have those kind of, like we don't have that falling in concrete revetment, the big squares, the
Yep.
with the
Yep.
copper wires in it.
Yep.
And we've got some of that here, but they put it down here so early on that it's totally destroyed now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's covered up, you know. But up at Tunica, there's still acres of it up there you can fish, and man, it's got holes in it, and it holds some good fish.
Well,
And that's what feeds those areas are all upriver from Battle Axe.
wow.
And Battle Axe is a mud bottom. I mean, it's a hard bottom. It ain't no structure, nothing in Battle Axe. It's just a great big old eddy on the side of the river.
Yeah.
It's about 150 acres. But right above it is some 100-foot water with all that concrete piled up there.
Yeah.
And I've hung several fish in there, and they get back up under that concrete, and you're done.
Well,
You can sit there, and he'll come out a little bit, and you think he's gonna come out, and then he goes back in, and you can feel that line sawing on that concrete down. It's just a matter of time. But that's less than a mile. That strip of bank is probably 2 miles long, and it's less than a mile from Battle Axe. I mean, it's all right there together. And Battle Axe is calm, 6-ounce water, and this water, and this bank that's right above Battle Axe is 14-ounce water.
no.
Yeah, buddy.
Okay. So
And
the flathead zone is once you come out of that 14-inch water, you start dropping into about 8, 7, 6.
but the only thing about that, Tim, is a damn boat ramp in Arkansas right there. And there's a point sticks out, and you can't go by there. There ain't at least 3 people sitting on that point.
But you know what? Who cares? Because most of them don't really know what they're doing in the first place.
Yeah, but that's some.
So, Steve, one of the things I found out by the time I was probably 30, 32 is that doesn't really where you go on the planet. Is that use that equation, and by the time I was 30, 32, I ended up going down to South America and fished the Xingu, which is a major tributary of the actual Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
I was spot on as far as being able to figure out where either the Jau or the Barbershot and Barbershot are more like channel cats or blues. I was actually better at catching those. There was another one called the Palmetto, which was kind of a channel cat type thing. And I truly wish I would have went a little bit later in life when I really understood like the Piraiba type.
Yeah.
So Piraibas are more like blues, although. So if you're going to not catch as many red tails, which red tails hang out in flathead / blue cat habitat, and
Mm-hmm.
then uh, you, but if you really want to like pound up on some Piraibas, you're looking at least on the Shingu, you're looking at 170 to 200 foot water,
Mm.
and it's kind of fast on top.
Yeah.
And so you really got to go into the narrows, which the narrows are probably 180 foot wide. Um, there's other rivers in South America. They're going to be found in different areas, blah blah blah. But the Shinga was like a clear water river, and we ended up going into the canyon style, which it's all volcanic rock, which
Mm-hmm.
goes for like super hard cliffs. And we ended up fishing 170 foot of water. For one, to stay away from the piranha. Two, we'd already caught as many barbershop, which those are the ones with the whiskers that are like like this long on
Oh, hey.
3 foot fish. Palmitos are jumping out of the water, crazy. Bicuda are different, but we ended up getting on the Piraibas after we had done like 2 days on red tails, which are, like I said, more like flathead habitat.
Mm-hmm.
But the Piraibas were uh, like a Penn 4/0 center in that kind of water.
Yeah.
It was like ripping it down to like the bare minimum. It was pretty freaking crazy.
Yeah.
I so wish I would have had a phone back in those days that could have like recorded it.
Yeah.
It was pretty awesome.
I've seen
Uh,
some videos of people fishing down there, and that water's pretty treacherous.
it is, but I haven't seen anybody's videos that would compare to what I remember about the Shingu.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, you go through these super rapids with Pyara that were like Pyara are like the crazy, vampire fish, and then you got the Bicuda. I actually tried to lip one because it didn't like the first time. First time I ever like grabbed on a Bicuda. It was kind of a small one, about 3 foot long, and it didn't look really like it had teeth. But I put my thumb in its mouth, and it just cut the shit out of me right there. And the next fish I caught was like a 9-pound black piranha.
Yeah.
And as soon as I hauled that thing in the boat, the Indian guys that were there didn't wear any shoes, and all they did was like throw their feet up in the air like a baby. I was like,
Yeah.
"What is going on here?" So I put my pliers in its mouth, and it like broke its own teeth clamping down onto the pliers. And I was like, "Yeah, that's not cool." And so, I've always been like a donkey bait kind of guy. So let me back up. We had like what's called oh God, what was that called? It's been so long since we talked about it. Well, anyway, it looked like kind of a sucker,
Yeah.
and it had like a downturned mouth. Only it was like black with yellow stripes all the way around it.
Yeah.
Very much like a sucker. And so we went to catch bait one afternoon, and the guides said to me, they looked at my crappie hook and they just went like this. Just went like that. And so I had like an Aberdeen, like a 12/0.
Yeah.
Sorry, not 12/0, just number 12.
Number 12.
Aberdeen, like crappie hook. I throw it out there in like this shallow pool. We can see these things. And what they eat is like these crazy snails that are like as long as your finger. They're like fat
Yeah.
on one end, and they kind of spiral, to a
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and I was just thinking to myself, well, okay, I'm going to use that. So the pilot, he gets out there and he gets on the rocks and he smashes them. He puts a little snail thing on there and we throw them out in this little pool. And I see one bite and takes it down kind of like a sucker, only a little bit harder. And I set the hook and I got him halfway to the bank and it falls off. And I look at my hook.
It's straight.
It's not straight. It's like cut off.
Oh,
Like cut half off. And I'm like, huh? Whatever. So I do it again. Same thing happens. And the pilot guy, his name is Aurora. And Aurora means beautiful parrot of the forest, which is very similar to the same name they have in Portuguese for a red-tailed catfish. So I'm thinking this guy's name's Redtail, even though it isn't. He ended up telling me later, but I end up, and he's like, no, you got to have this. And they hand me this horrible hook that it's like kind of stainless steel and it's really thick and really big, got a big barb. And that's what I got to catch these. They were named Piao. Matter of fact, I just now remember the name of them. So a Piao is like this sucker fish. And so I end up catching my first one and I just like unhooked it. But then I got the pliers out, looked in there. And in the sucker mouth, it's got this this pharyngeal, almost like an octopus. So it's got this beak thing inside the sucker mouth that it's designed to grab the end of these long snails, and they break off that, which lets the suction loose, and then they suction out the rest of it. I'm like, holy moly.
He just cutting your hooks off like it wasn't nothing.
He did. They all did, like the first two or three, until they gave me the bigger hook. And it was harder to catch them on the bigger hook than it was my Aberdeen crabby hook. But neither here nor there. We ended up using pacu for bait, which were like the large aquarium version. It was like really shiny and it had like a hard red hook on its. And then we actually got in the water one day, and people are like, "I'm not so sure you should get in the water," but it was hot. It was hot as shit, and so I just kept my clothes on because I didn't want one of those fish that swim up your
go up, yeah.
So I got in the water and we caught like a bunch of peacock bass, probably that big, and I ended up catching like a 90-pound Piraíba in the deep water on one of those. I caught like a 110-pound Piraíba, but I had one with my 6/0 Senator that I couldn't slow down, and I caught that on a giant piece of a Piao, which was like this big, and like a 12/0 ocean hook. Well, very similar to that.
Yeah.
But I couldn't slow it down on my pen, and I literally had like a shark rod, but it was probably 180 foot of water, and the river wasn't but 100 yards wide.
Yeah,
but it was that fast of water. And,
right.
And the boats are so terrible. They were like aluminum canoes. It was kind of bad. And the sinkers were so bad because what they did is they took a Dixie cup and they filled it with concrete and like put like like an eye bolt in it.
Right.
They were terrible. If I was ever to go again, I would bring all my own weights, all my own hooks, and I would literally want to fly my own boat over there.
It sounds like fun though.
Oh, it was. It was. Second night that we woke up there, there was these. eh, The boat ramp had like a old boathouse by
Yeah.
it, and then there was like this sand beach. It was kind of like a bay, and then there was a creek coming in, a real small creek. So you come in and you just park at the boathouse, and I saw probably 30 iguanas just sunning themselves on the beach, right? And so I'm thinking, yeah, I was 26, 27 years old. I was actually a lumberjack at the time, and I thought, I'm gonna sneak up on these things. I'm gonna grab one because this is gonna be awesome, and I'll take pictures. This is gonna be great. Blah blah blah. I snuck up around the boathouse, and as soon as those things saw me, they freaking ran like the wind, and they literally like didn't even swim over this creek, even though the creek was probably only like 9, 10 foot wide. They literally were going so fast that
Yeah,
they
it is.
didn't even they just plop 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 right over the creek, and I was about this close to like the last one, the slowest one that they had. But I was thinking to myself, these things are kind of mean. If I would have grabbed one by the tail, it probably would have just like leached around and like bit me in the face.
Hmm. Yeah,
but
Lord.
but I was ready to catch one, but it didn't happen. I
It
did. There was grasshoppers this big. I mean,
Oh, Lord.
huge, like like 5 times as big as this lighter. And
Yeah.
like the film lady had one like on the back of her shoulder one time. It was like a big green grasshopper. That was crazy. So the first 5 minutes that we get to the place, the howler monkeys are going off like 10,000 demons.
Oh,
But we
Lord.
get into the place, and the place is like this grandiose, like I can't even explain it. But the owner of the place has got like a little broom, and he sweeps something off the porch. It turns out it's a tarantula about that big. As soon as he
Oh, yeah.
sweeps it out of the porch, a giant cane toad comes up and stuffs it in his mouth. I was like, oh yeah, I'm in a great place.
That's a whole different world, isn't
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had a cocoa plantation and all that stuff. So I went in the woods, which I'm no sissy, but I went in the woods for probably 20 minutes. The big rainforest shit. I started
it?
itching. I'm like itching all over the place because I like bumped into something stupid. And Aurora's like, oh no, gringos do not go into the forest. I'm like, well, probably not.
Yeah. Not
I,
anymore.
I started freaking getting all like itchy and shit.
No.
I've been in every forest, deciduous forest in the lower 48 states, but
Yeah.
that shit just kind of knocked me down.
Yeah. If you're not from there, I imagine you don't,
Oh,
you don't have a tolerance for that kind
yeah.
of stuff, whatever it
I
was.
got fire ants in my underwear that these things were like, they were bit on to Mike Johnson and they were sticking straight out like this.
Oh, man.
Not like this, like this. And fire ants aren't really that big. You would think a thing of fire ants, uh, maybe they're big. They're not. They're tiny. But I ended up leaving my like my suitcase on the floor
Yeah.
because everything looks clean there. I mean, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But I put my underwear on the next day and was like, what the hell is that? So I took them down, and I had fire ants stuck to my Johnson
Oh,
sticking
God.
straight out.
Man.
Oh yeah, it was
Huh.
not cool.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah.
And well, I don't guess it's any way to keep that stuff out of from going in the houses and all.
Nope. You got to keep
Right.
it zipped up and on the bed. You don't
Yeah.
lay it on the floor, and by God, don't have like a nutty bar in there. And that's what I had. I had a nutty bar in there, and it like in my suitcase, and it attracted them. So yeah, they washed all my stuff.
I imagine they had fun with that gringo, didn't they?
Oh, you know,
I bet them guys down there said, "Lord, this guy here, I don't know."
yeah,
how he
exactly. But you know, I learned Portuguese in about 12 minutes.
Oh,
At least
yeah.
the fishing part of it. I learned Hazu and Fundu and you know all these other words, and so I learned. The food was fantastic. Everybody was telling me that you got to watch out for the food. Now, I could eat a pork chop that laid out on the counter for 3 days at that time.
Yeah.
You get a pork chop, you just throw it out on the counter. I could eat that shit because I was constantly eating sandwiches and setting it on like a shad pile,
Right.
you know, on my guide trips and stuff. So I was just like, whatever. And the food was fantastic. Some other people in my group got a little sick on the food or the water or whatever, and they had kind of a miserable couple days. But I got tired, but I didn't get sick.
Yeah.
Not from
What
the food.
did you have to get malaria shots and all that to go down there?
What's that? Oh yeah, I've got a list because there's still yellow fever down there, and if you get yellow fever, you're pretty much done. You're not going to be able to hold a job. You're not going to do shit. So I got the yellow fever, the rubella, which is normal, the whatever. So malaria, I ate the malaria pills, which are hydrochlorothiazide, whatever. I matter of fact, I just saw that the other day because I just went to the doctor and they give you the rundown on the stuff that you've had as far as immunizations. Oh, yeah. I was a pincushion before I went there. I was like, oh, I'm not getting that shit.
Yeah, well, that's a zone where they got all kind of diseases.
Oh yeah,
and all of them.
And my insurance company didn't want to pay for it because they don't do preventative unless you can prove it. And I told them, I said, I'm going to like the fucking bush. I'm not like going to, Belém or whatever and just spending a couple days and coming home. I'm going into the wrecking place where people are still wearing grass skirts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then they still didn't give a shit. So I paid for it myself.
And all of them mosquito-borne diseases, a lot of them.
Yeah, and Steve, we have mosquitoes here. I've been down in your zone. You've probably been up in my zone. And mosquitoes, they're some of them are big, some of them are small. These mosquitoes down there, I was using 100% DEET, the shit that'll like burn your eyeballs out.
Right.
And as soon as you lean your shirt, if you bend over, they'll fly in your shirt and bite you. These things are way more aggressive than what we got, unless you go up into like almost the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
All the mosquitoes we have down here are pretty darn docile. They'll bother you. You put 40% DEET or 60% DEET, they're gonna pretty much stay away from you. That shit, you put 100% DEET, and then you have one little part that maybe your eye, maybe your eye washed, like your eyes weep a little bit, and they wash it up. They'd attack the one place you didn't have it, or the one up underneath your shirt, or below your pant leg line. Yeah, great. I'll never forget. Aurora.
Well, wait a minute. How do the natives do? How do they survive it? They just don't.
They have natural immunity. For some reason, their bodies don't attract them too bad. Like Aurora, he never. There was a couple other guys. They didn't have to worry about that shit at all. They didn't even put like whatever. They're just from there. But our system evidently has so much whatever we put out that attracts them. They're like really on us. But uh, I forgot what I was going to talk about. But whatever. Just all kinds of crazy shit down there.
Well,
I did like to fish because when I went there, my oldest son was 1 year old, and if I wouldn't have had a wife and kids, I would have never came home. Never. I would have stayed there because that fishing situation is so crazy and so awesome that I really never would have came home because I could have lived pretty well down there because they didn't have any English speaking guides at all. Even though at that time, I'm sure everything's changed now. But at that time, the owner of the lodge offered me like $50,000 to just live there and guide like dignitaries and whatever. They fly around the country and do whatever. And part of the deal would have been, because I had a really good website at the time. I would have like promoted, certain things and blah blah blah. But $50,000 in 1999, 2000, 2001 was a absolute crap load of money in Brazil at the time. But the problem was too. I was diabetic even back then, and there's no doctors you can get to. There isn't.
No,
No, so it was a pretty easy choice for me.
Well, look, did you have to get there by boat, or was it a road going in there?
There was a road, even though it was like probably, from Belém, which is the main port, which is what we flew into. Then we had to take a small plane from Belém to Altamira. Then from Altamira, it was only 60 miles, but it was like 9 hours to get there. 60 miles and 9 hours in a four-wheel drive van in which we had to traverse probably 9 washouts with like boards we carried on the top. The van kind of reminded me of the Mystery Machine, except for it had like these planks that were like 15 foot long, 16 foot long, and the van was only 12. And so every time we got to like a giant washout, like we go way downhill like this on like a gravel bullshit road in the rainforest, then we'd have to get out and put these planks, and the van would straddle these planks, and if the van fell, it'd go like 30 foot into a ravine. I was like, yes, this is awful.
And then you had to carry the planks back up the hill and put them back up on top of the truck and go again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Lord have mercy.
Yes, sir. And you know what? There was people that were farmers that were literally by their own hand pulling wooden wagons with wooden wheels to Altamira in that same 60-mile route, and it would take them like 2.5 weeks to get there. And these were not slopey hills; they were like hills like that. It was like this. So they'd go down. They'd have to put their own planks across, and they cross these ravines, and then like pull them up. And all they had was like rainforest type, like fruit and shit, stuff that was worth like $150, and they would literally spend 2 weeks like hauling that shit. If they were lucky, they had donkeys.
Yeah.
You know what a Mr. Ugly is? All right, so it's a sucker mouth catfish. It's in the catfish family, but it's endemic to the Amazon River system. And
Yeah.
there, when I first got to this was the first night that we were at the lodge, which if you can call it the lodge. We went down to where the boathouse was, where I tried to catch the iguanas.
Yeah.
Well, there was no iguanas there that first evening. There was a dude that looked kind of like Tarzan, and he literally, except for he's only like 4'9". He had like a loincloth on, and he had like a glass tube that was probably 2 foot long, and it was like strapped to his waist. And that's all he's got. He goes down, and the whole bay is only 3 foot, right? But it's clear. It's all sand because the main river is just 25, 30 foot out. And he's down there, and he's got 2 sticks in this glass tube. So he's got the glass tube filled with water, and he lays it on the sand, and he takes his 2 sticks, and he like funnels what's called in the aquarium industry a Mr. Ugly, which is basically scientific name Propostomus. And back in those days, they sold at like Walmart or whatever for like $6.
Oh, hey.
So for 25 cents, this dude, this tiny Tarzan is down there with no whatever. He's like submerging himself for 3 minutes in his loincloth and like funneling these little sucker mouth catfish into this thing. He got 3 of them, and he got up. He was still tied to his waist, or he tied it back to his waist. He gets out, and our interpreter says he's ready to go to town. So for 75 cents, he was ready to walk 60 miles. Walk 60 miles for
3 of them
for a quarter a piece. 75 cents. Yeah. Now, granted, this is in like 1999.
Yeah.
It's probably not that different now.
Probably not much, though.
No, probably not.
I mean, hell, if it was 10 times better, that'd be $7.50.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, that will just tell you what the situation is with the third world countries and how literally poor they are and what they will do for 75 cents or $10. And I made the mistake of giving our guides $20 to go catch us some piao, because by the time we were closer to the end of the trip, I was so wore out. I was sleeping on the veranda in the sun. And I was so wore out because it was like 23 hours on a flight in which I didn't sleep worth a shit. And then by like the 4th or 5th day, I'm like, hey, I need you guys to go catch me some piao. I gave them $20. Well, guess what they did? They left. They went to their home in the jungle and never came back. And Flavio, the guy that was like sweeping out tarantula, he's like, yeah, don't do that.
So now that the guys are gone.
Huh?
I said, now your guide is gone.
Yeah. Yeah. So not only that, we don't have any pilots.
Don't have any pilots. There's no break.
I just gave them a month's worth of wages just to go get me like 5 piao.
Yeah.
They just thought I was being nice and like decided to tip them a month's wages.
Lord have mercy. All right, Tim, I'm finna shut this thing down because it's time for Hawgleg to crank up.
All right, buddy.
I see Jody's and come in. A bunch of them saying hello to you.
Hey, hello, everybody.
We done missed her.
I can't see anybody but you. I don't know if there was one.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I got you.
People in here.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed it, man.
I enjoyed it too,
They-
Steve.
We always get out of the way so Hawgleg can get his crew going.
Yep. I always enjoy talking to a legend like yourself.
There you go. Well, a legend in my own mind, maybe.
Well, you know what? It's all it's all in the eye of the beholder.
That's right.
That's right.
That's it.
All right.
All right, well, let's take it easy here.
Yep. See you, buddy.
I'll see everybody later.
See you,
Thank
everybody.
y'all for coming by.